The boardroom was silent, except for the rustle of a single document sliding across polished mahogany. Aria Bennett's hands trembled as she read the terms. Marry a stranger, sign over control, or watch everything collapse within 48 hours. Across from her sat a man she'd never met, Caleb Ryder, 32, exhausted, a father who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His own father, the architect of this trap, waited for her answer with the patience of a predator. But when Caleb finally spoke, it wasn't the word his father expected. It was the word that changed everything. If you want to see how a quiet single dad dismantled a corporate empire to save a woman he barely knew and what it cost him, stay with me until the end. Like this video and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The meeting had been scheduled for 2 o'clock. Aria Bennett arrived at 1:45, which meant she was already losing. She stood in the lobby of Ryder Capital Holdings, a glass tower that reflected nothing but sky and money, and tried to steady her breathing. 30 years old. CEO of a mid-sized manufacturing firm her grandfather had built from nothing. 6 months away from bankruptcy, not because she'd failed, but because someone with more power had decided she should. The elevator climbed 63 floors without a sound. Aria watched the numbers tick upward and felt her stomach drop with each passing second. She'd spent the last 72 hours reviewing every angle, every clause, every exit. There were none. Her lawyers had been clear. Either she took the deal Maxwell Ryder was offering, or Bennett Industries would be dismantled and sold for parts by the end of the quarter. The doors opened onto a reception area so pristine it felt hostile. A woman in a charcoal suit gestured toward a corridor without smiling. Aria followed, heels clicking against marble, briefcase gripped too tight in one hand. The boardroom was smaller than she expected. Intimate. A table for 6, but only 3 chairs occupied. Maxwell Ryder sat at the head, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who looked at people the way surgeons looked at incisions. Beside him sat a younger man Aria didn't recognize, mid-30s, dark hair, tired eyes, wearing a suit that fit well but looked uncomfortable on him. He had the posture of someone who'd been sitting too long and wanted to leave. "Ms. Bennett," Maxwell said, rising just enough to be polite. "Please, sit." Aria sat. The younger man didn't look at her. "This is my son Caleb," Maxwell gestured with one hand. "He'll be involved in the arrangement." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Arrangement. Not deal. Not negotiation. Arrangement, like she was a problem being filed away. Maxwell slid a folder across the table. "I trust you've reviewed the preliminary terms." She had. 3 times. Once with her legal team, once alone at 2 in the morning, and once in the car on the way here, hoping the words would somehow change. "You're offering to clear Bennett Industries' debt in exchange for a controlling stake and operational oversight," Aria said carefully. "That's not a partnership. That's a takeover." "It's survival," Maxwell corrected. "Your creditors will move within the week. Your board is already discussing a vote of no confidence. Without intervention, you'll lose everything. And with your intervention, I lose everything slower." Maxwell's smile was thin and joyless. "You keep your title, you keep your office, you keep the illusion of control. What you lose is the burden of failure." Aria's hands were flat on the table, fingers pressing into the wood to keep them from shaking. "And him?" She glanced at Caleb, who was staring at a spot somewhere past her shoulder. "What's his role in this?" "Caleb will act as your partner," Maxwell said smoothly. "Publicly and privately. A marriage, Ms. Bennett. Binding, visible, and stabilizing. It sends a message to your investors that Bennett Industries is entering a new phase under strong leadership." The room tilted. Aria heard the words but couldn't process them in order. Marriage, publicly, binding. "You're joking." "I'm offering you a solution." "You're offering me a cage." Maxwell leaned back, fingers steepled. "You're young, talented, but inexperienced. The market doesn't trust you to navigate this crisis. A merger with my family changes that narrative. Caleb is respected, stable, reliable. He'll be the reassurance your stakeholders need." Aria looked at Caleb again. He still hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, just sat there like a man waiting for a sentencing. "Does he get a say in this?" she asked. Maxwell's expression didn't change. "Caleb understands what's required." Finally, Caleb spoke. His voice was low, rough around the edges. I have a daughter. Arya blinked. What? A daughter, Caleb repeated, eyes still fixed somewhere distant. She's 4. This affects her. Maxwell's mouth thinned, which is why discretion is paramount. The arrangement will be professional, no unnecessary disruptions. Disruptions, Caleb echoed, and there was something bitter in the word. Arya felt a flash of anger cut through the shock. I'm not a business acquisition, and I'm sure as hell not signing up to be part of some staged performance. Then you'll lose your company, Maxwell said simply. I'm not here to negotiate terms you find palatable, Ms. Bennett. I'm here to present reality. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer is rescinded, and you're on your own. She wanted to stand, wanted to walk out, wanted to tell Maxwell Ryder exactly what he could do with his arrangement. But her legs wouldn't move. Because he was right. She was out of options. Caleb finally looked at her. Really looked. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something there. Frustration, maybe. Exhaustion, definitely. And beneath it all, something that looked like resignation. I don't want this either, he said quietly. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't solidarity. But it was the first honest thing anyone had said in this room. Arya's throat tightened. Then why are you here? Caleb's gaze shifted back to his father, and she saw it then. The weight pressing down on him, invisible but crushing. Because I don't have a choice. Maxwell stood, smoothing his tie. I'll leave you two to discuss. Caleb, make sure Ms. Bennett understands the timeline. He moved toward the door, paused. This is a good deal, Ms. Bennett. I suggest you take it. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. Silence settled over the room like dust. Arya exhaled slowly, felt the adrenaline start to ebb, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. She looked at Caleb, who was rubbing his face with one hand, and for the first time since she'd walked in, she saw him clearly. Not as part of the trap, but as someone caught in it. You don't want this, she said. No. But you're going to do it anyway. Caleb dropped his hand, met her eyes. He's my father. He controls everything, my career, my assets, my daughter's trust fund. If I say no, he'll make sure I can't provide for her. That's blackmail. That's family. Arya laughed, sharp and humorless. Great, so we're both screwed. Caleb didn't disagree. She leaned back in her chair, stared at the ceiling. Recessed lighting, perfectly spaced. Everything in this building was perfect, controlled, cold. I built that company, she said, and her voice cracked just slightly. My grandfather started it with nothing. My father expanded it. I was supposed to protect it. And now I'm supposed to hand it over to a man I've never met because some billionaire decided I'm not capable enough. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then, you're capable. She looked at him, surprised. I've seen your financials, he continued, reviewed your projects. You didn't fail, you were sabotaged. By your father. Probably. And you're okay with that? Caleb's expression hardened. I'm not okay with any of this. Arya studied him. There was anger there, buried deep but present. Maybe, she thought, he wasn't as resigned as he seemed. What if we don't do it his way? She asked slowly. Caleb frowned. What do you mean? He wants a marriage, a merger, a clean narrative. What if we give him something else? Like what? Arya sat forward, mind starting to turn. A partnership, temporary, just long enough to stabilize Bennett Industries and get your father off both our backs. No marriage, no contracts that lock me out of my own company. Just a working arrangement that looks convincing enough to satisfy investors. Caleb was watching her now, really watching. He won't go for it. He doesn't have to. We present it as us negotiating terms between ourselves. A compromise. Something that gives him most of what he wants without either of us getting completely destroyed in the process. He'll see through it. Maybe. But he wants control of Bennett Industries, right? If we give him that, temporarily, he gets his foothold in the market. And if you're the one managing the oversight, he doesn't have to do the work himself. That's what he really wants, expansion without effort. Caleb leaned back, arms crossed. He was thinking. She could see it, the gears turning behind those tired eyes. And what do you get out of this, he asked. Time, breathing room, a chance to fix the damage and find another way forward. If I take his deal as is, I lose everything immediately. If we do this, I at least keep fighting. It's a risk. Everything's a risk right now. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then, what about my daughter? Arya hesitated. She hadn't thought about the kid, hadn't factored in that complication. What about her? If we're doing this, even temporarily, it affects her. She's 4. She doesn't understand corporate politics. She just knows her dad is never home. There was guilt in his voice, buried under the exhaustion. Arya felt something twist in her chest. I'm not asking you to marry me, she said carefully. I'm asking you to help me survive long enough to fix this. That doesn't mean your life has to implode. Caleb's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. My life's already imploded. Then what's a little more chaos? This time he did smile, faint and bitter. You're serious about this? I'm desperate, Arya corrected. There's a difference. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The city stretched out below them, endless glass and steel. If we do this, he said slowly, it has to be on our terms, not his. That means no marriage, no binding contracts that screw either of us over, just a partnership, temporary, transparent. Agreed. And if he pushes back, we walk. Both of us? Caleb turned to face her. Both of us. Arya stood crossed to where he was standing. She held out her hand. Deal. He looked at her hand, then at her face. For a moment she thought he wouldn't take it. Then his fingers closed around hers, firm and warm. Deal, he said. The second meeting happened 3 days later. Maxwell Ryder didn't look pleased. Arya sat across from him again, Caleb beside her this time, instead of across. A small shift, but it mattered. They'd spent the last 72 hours hammering out terms, reviewing financials, building a framework that might actually work. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. You're proposing a strategic partnership, Maxwell said, voice flat. Not a merger. Correct, Caleb said. And no marriage. Correct. Maxwell's eyes moved between them, sharp and assessing. This isn't what we discussed. It's better, Arya said. A marriage would raise questions. A partnership keeps things professional, focused on business. Investors will respond to competence, not spectacle. Investors respond to stability, which is what we're offering. Caleb will oversee operations at Bennett Industries, report directly to you, and ensure the restructuring stays on track. I maintain my role as CEO, but with transparent accountability. It's cleaner. Maxwell leaned back, fingers drumming once on the armrest. And you think this addresses the concerns my board has about Bennett Industries' viability? It does if Caleb does his job well, Arya said. Caleb didn't flinch. I will. Maxwell's gaze settled on his son. There was something unreadable there. Something that looked like disappointment or calculation, or both. You're putting a lot of faith in Ms. Bennett's ability to turn this around. I've reviewed her work, Caleb said evenly. She's capable. The problems at Bennett Industries are external, not internal. External problems created by market forces. Market forces you influenced. The room went very still. Maxwell's expression didn't change, but Arya felt the temperature drop. Careful, Caleb. I'm stating facts, Caleb said. You wanted Bennett Industries vulnerable so you could acquire it at a discount. You got what you wanted. Now we're offering you a way to monetize that acquisition without the mess of a hostile takeover. Take it or don't. Arya held her breath. Maxwell stared at his son for a long, tense moment. Then slowly he smiled. It wasn't warm. You've grown a spine, he said. Interesting. Caleb said nothing. Maxwell turned his attention back to Arya. 6 months. You have 6 months to prove Bennett Industries can operate in the black under this arrangement. If you succeed, I'll consider releasing my claim. If you fail, the company becomes mine outright. Non-negotiable. It was a trap. Arya knew it was a trap. 6 months wasn't enough time to undo the damage Maxwell had caused, but it was more than she'd had an hour ago. Agreed, she said. One more condition, Maxwell added. Caleb stays involved for the full term. No walking away early, no renegotiating. If either of you breaks the agreement, the deal collapses and I take everything. Arya looked at Caleb. He was watching his father, jaw set. Fine, Caleb said. Maxwell stood, extending a hand. Then we have an agreement. Arya shook it, felt the coldness of his grip. Caleb shook last, and she noticed he didn't hold on any longer than necessary. As they left the building, Arya felt the weight of what they'd just done settle over her like a heavy coat. 6 months. Prove the impossible or lose everything. Caleb walked beside her in silence until they reached the parking garage. "You know he's going to make this as hard as possible," Caleb said. "I know. He'll look for any excuse to declare us in breach." "I know." Caleb stopped, turned to face her. "So why did you agree?" Arya met his eyes. "Because you were right. I didn't fail. I was sabotaged, and I'm not going down without a fight." Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Okay," he said. "Then let's fight." The first week was hell. Caleb showed up at Bennett Industries on Monday morning with a box of files and a laptop. Arya met him in the lobby, led him up to the executive floor, and introduced him to her senior team. The reactions ranged from polite skepticism to outright hostility. "This is Caleb Ryder," Arya said. "He'll be overseeing operations for the next 6 months as part of our partnership with Ryder Capital." Her CFO, a woman named Laura Chen, folded her arms. "Overseeing, that's a polite way of saying babysitting." "I prefer auditing," Caleb said mildly. Laura didn't smile. "We don't need an audit. We need capital and time." "You'll get both," Caleb said, "if we do this right." The operations manager, David Grant, leaned back in his chair. "And if we don't? Then we all lose." It wasn't reassuring, but it was honest. Arya saw a few faces soften slightly. She set Caleb up in an office down the hall from hers. Small, functional, with a window that overlooked the production floor. He didn't complain, just unpacked his files, booted up his laptop, and got to work. By Wednesday, he'd identified 3 major inefficiencies in their supply chain and flagged 2 contracts that were hemorrhaging money. By Friday, he'd renegotiated terms with their largest supplier and saved Bennett Industries $40,000. Arya found him still at his desk at 8 p.m., tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by spreadsheets. "You should go home," she said from the doorway. Caleb looked up, blinked like he'd forgotten where he was. "Almost done." "You said that 2 hours ago." He smiled faintly. "This time I mean it." Arya leaned against the doorframe. "You have a kid. Shouldn't you be with her?" The smile faded. "She's with my sister tonight. Fridays are her sleepover nights." "Lucky timing." "Planned timing." Caleb closed his laptop, rubbed his eyes. "I don't get to be the dad I want to be right now, so I'm trying to be the dad who fixes things fast enough to get back to being present." Arya didn't know what to say to that. It was too raw, too real. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "you're good at this. The work, I mean." Caleb looked at her, and for the first time she saw the exhaustion fully. Not just physical, deeper. "I used to love this," he said. "Strategy, problem solving, building something that mattered. Then my father turned it into a weapon. Now I don't know what it is anymore." Arya stepped into the room, sat down in the chair across from his desk. "It's a tool, like anything else. Depends on who's holding it. And what they're building." "Yeah." Caleb studied her. "You really think we can pull this off? 6 months?" "I don't know," Arya admitted. "But I know I'm not giving up. Even if it's impossible?" "Especially then." Caleb laughed, soft and surprised. "You're stubborn. You're just figuring that out?" "I'm slow." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "What?" Arya asked. "Email from my father's office. He's moving up the first progress review." "He can't do that. We agreed on monthly check-ins. He's changing the terms, says he wants a preliminary assessment in 2 weeks. Arya's stomach dropped. "That's not enough time." "I know. We'll barely have data to show." "I know." "He's setting us up to fail." Caleb met her eyes. "Yeah, he is." Arya stood, paced to the window. Below, the production floor was dark, machines silent. Her grandfather had walked that floor every day for 40 years. Her father had done the same, and now she was here, fighting to keep it alive against a man who saw it as nothing more than leverage. "We need a win," she said. "Something big enough that he can't dismiss it." "Like what?" Arya turned back to him. "The Kellerman contract. Caleb's eyebrows rose. You've been trying to land that for 6 months. And I've been close 3 times. But Kellerman's skittish. He doesn't trust Bennett Industries' stability. So what's changed? You, Arya said. Ryder Capital's backing. If we approach him together, show him we're restructuring with serious support, he might bite. Caleb considered it. It's a long shot. It's all we have. He stood, grabbed his jacket. Then let's make the call. Popa. They met James Kellerman at a restaurant downtown. Neutral ground. Quiet enough for a real conversation. Public enough to feel safe. Kellerman was in his 60s. Silver-haired, sharp-eyed. The kind of man who'd built his empire from nothing and trusted no one. He shook Arya's hand with professional warmth, then Caleb's with curiosity. Ryder, Kellerman said, I know your father. Most people do, Caleb said evenly. He's a shark. He's effective. Kellerman smiled. Diplomatic. I like that. He gestured for them to sit. So, Bennett Industries. You're here to convince me you're not a sinking ship. We're here to show you we're rebuilding, Arya said, with the right support, the right strategy, and the right partnerships. Partnerships like Ryder Capital. Among others. Kellerman leaned back, fingers steepled. I've been watching your company for a while, Ms. Bennett. You've got good people, solid infrastructure, and a reputation for quality. But you've also got debt, instability, and a board that's one bad quarter away from a mutiny. All fixable, Caleb said. Kellerman's gaze shifted to him. You sound confident. I am. I've spent the last week auditing Bennett Industries' operations. The fundamentals are sound. The issues are external and temporary. Temporary, Kellerman repeated. That's a word people use when they're hoping for a miracle. It's a word I use when I've done the math, Caleb said. Bennett Industries can stabilize within 90 days if we execute the restructuring correctly. The Kellerman contract would accelerate that timeline and provide the capital buffer needed to weather the transition. And what do I get out of taking that risk? Priority terms, Arya said, guaranteed delivery schedules, and a manufacturing partner who won't fold the moment market conditions shift. Kellerman studied them both. You're asking me to bet on a turnaround. We're asking you to bet on competence, Caleb said. Bennett Industries has the capacity. We just need the runway. Kellerman was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, sent a quick message. I'll have my team send over revised terms. If your numbers hold up under scrutiny, we'll move forward. Arya felt relief flood through her, sharp and overwhelming. Thank you. Kellerman stood, shook their hands again. Don't thank me yet. If you screw this up, I'll make sure everyone knows Bennett Industries is dead in the water. Understood, Caleb said. As Kellerman left, Arya sank back into her chair, exhaled slowly. We did it, she said. We got a maybe, Caleb corrected. Now we have to deliver. Always so optimistic. Always so realistic. Arya smiled despite herself. Fair. They left the restaurant together, stepped out into the cool evening air. The city was alive around them, lights and noise and movement. For the first time in weeks, Arya felt like she could breathe. Thank you, she said quietly. Caleb glanced at her. For what? For showing up, for fighting. We made a deal. It's more than that. Caleb stopped walking, turned to face her. Yeah, he said. It is. They stood there on the sidewalk, the world moving around them, and Arya realized something that should have scared her, but didn't. She trusted him. This man she'd known for less than 2 weeks. This stranger her grandfather would have called an enemy. She trusted him. Come on, Caleb said, breaking the moment. I'll walk you to your car. I can manage. I know. I'm walking you anyway. Arya didn't argue. The preliminary review happened exactly 2 weeks later. Maxwell Ryder sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by 2 members of his board. Arya and Caleb sat across from them, files and laptops spread out like armor. Let's begin, Maxwell said. Mr. Ryder, your assessment. Caleb stood, pulled up a presentation on the screen. Bennett Industries has reduced operational costs by 12%, renegotiated 3 major supplier contracts, and secured preliminary terms with Kellerman Manufacturing. Revenue projections for Q2 are up 8% from initial forecasts. One of the board members, a woman named Margaret Hale, leaned forward. Preliminary terms, not a signed contract. Correct, Caleb said. Finalization is pending delivery of 2 sample production runs, which are scheduled for next week. So you're banking on a deal that isn't closed? I'm banking on our ability to execute, which we've demonstrated consistently over the last 2 weeks. Maxwell's expression was unreadable. What about the board situation, Ms. Bennett? I hear there's been talk of a vote. Arya kept her voice steady. There's always talk, but the numbers speak for themselves. We're stabilizing. Stabilizing isn't thriving. It's better than collapsing. Margaret frowned. Your tone, Ms. Bennett, is honest, Arya interrupted. You wanted an assessment. Here it is. Bennett Industries is on track. We're meeting benchmarks, securing contracts, and rebuilding confidence. If that's not enough, then this review isn't about progress. It's about control. The room went silent. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. Careful. I'm stating facts, Arya said, echoing Caleb's words from weeks ago. You set us up to fail with an impossible timeline. We're succeeding anyway. If you move the goalposts again, we'll know this was never about saving the company. Margaret looked at Maxwell. She has a point. Maxwell didn't respond immediately. He looked at Caleb. Your take? Caleb met his father's gaze. We're doing the work. The results are there. Either you honor the agreement or you don't. Another long, tense silence. Then Maxwell leaned back, smiled that cold, joyless smile. Fine. You have 4 more months, but I'll be watching closely. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss. As they left the building, Arya felt the adrenaline crash hit her all at once. Her hands were shaking. Caleb noticed. You okay? No, she said honestly. But I will be. You stood up to him. We both did. Caleb's mouth twitched. Yeah, we did. They walked to the parking garage in silence. At her car, Arya stopped, turned to face him. I know this is temporary, she said. I know we're just trying to survive 6 months. But I want you to know, you're not just helping me save my company. You're helping me remember why it's worth saving. Caleb looked at her, and for a moment she saw something vulnerable flicker across his face. Then he nodded. Same, he said quietly. Arya got in her car, drove home, and for the first time in months, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She slept hard, dreamless, and woke up ready to fight another day. The Kellerman contract closed on a Thursday. Arya got the call at 6 a.m. while she was still in bed, staring at the ceiling and running through the day's crisis list in her head. She answered on the second ring, heard James Kellerman's voice, measured and calm. Ms. Bennett, your sample runs past inspection. My legal team is drafting the final contract. We'll have it to you by end of business today. She sat up so fast her head spun. You're serious? I don't joke about money, Kellerman said. Congratulations. Don't screw this up. The line went dead. Arya sat there holding her phone, heart hammering, barely able to process it. They'd done it, actually done it. The Kellerman contract was worth 18 months of steady revenue, enough to stabilize Bennett Industries and buy them real breathing room. She called Caleb before she'd even gotten out of bed. He answered on the 4th ring, voice rough with sleep. This better be important. Kellerman signed. Silence. Then, say that again. Kellerman signed. We got the contract. She heard movement on the other end, the rustle of sheets, a door closing quietly. When Caleb spoke again, his voice was clearer, more awake. He called you directly? 5 minutes ago. And he's sending the final contract today? End of business. Another pause. Then Caleb laughed, short and surprised. We actually pulled it off. Don't sound so shocked. I'm allowed to be a little shocked. Arya smiled despite herself. Fair. Are you coming in today? I'll be there in an hour. You don't have to rush. It's 6 a.m. Arya, we just closed the biggest deal Bennett Industries has seen in 2 years. I'm not staying in bed. She heard something in the background, a small voice, sleepy and questioning. Caleb's tone shifted immediately, softer. Hey, sweetheart, go back to sleep. Daddy's just on the phone. The small voice said something Arya couldn't make out. Caleb responded quietly, patient, and she felt an unexpected pang in her chest. This man who was saving her company was also a father trying to hold his own life together with both hands. I'll see you soon, Caleb said, back to his normal voice. Yeah. See you soon. Arya hung up, sat on the edge of her bed, and let herself feel it. Relief. Exhaustion. Something dangerously close to hope. Then she got dressed and went to work. By the time Caleb arrived, Arya had already called an emergency meeting with her senior team. They gathered in the conference room, coffee in hand, looking wary. Arya couldn't blame them. Emergency meetings usually meant bad news. Kellerman Manufacturing signed, she said without preamble. Contracts being finalized today. The room erupted. Laura Chen actually smiled, rare and genuine. David Grant let out a whoop. Even the normally stoic head of production, Marcus Webb, looked stunned. How did you pull that off? Laura asked. We didn't, Arya said, glancing at Caleb, who just walked in. He did. Caleb set his briefcase down, looked mildly uncomfortable with the attention. It was a team effort. Don't be modest, Laura said. You've been here 3 weeks and you just saved this company's life. I helped stabilize it, Caleb corrected. Arya's the one who built the relationship with Kellerman in the first place. And you're the one who closed it, Arya said. Take the win. Caleb's mouth twitched. Fine. We'll share it. They spent the next 2 hours hammering out logistics, production schedules, staffing adjustments, supply chain coordination. The Kellerman contract was aggressive, demanding tight turnarounds and high-volume output. But it was doable. Barely. As the meeting wrapped, Laura pulled Arya aside. I owe you an apology, Laura said quietly. Arya frowned. For what? For doubting this whole arrangement. When you brought Ryder in, I thought it was just corporate babysitting. Another suit who'd micromanage us into the ground and then disappear when things got hard. And now? Laura glanced at Caleb, who was talking with Marcus by the door. Now I think you found the one person who actually gives a damn. Arya followed her gaze. Caleb was listening intently to whatever Marcus was saying, nodding, asking questions. He looked tired. He always looked tired, but focused, present. Yeah, Arya said softly. I think I did. The rest of the week passed in a blur of contract reviews, production planning, and late nights. Arya and Caleb fell into a rhythm. She handled client relations and board management. He handled operations and financial oversight. They worked well together, better than Arya had expected. Caleb didn't second-guess her decisions, and she didn't undermine his authority. It was partnership in the truest sense, built on mutual respect and shared desperation. But Maxwell Ryder wasn't done. The first sign came on Monday morning. Arya arrived at the office to find an inspector from the State Commerce Board waiting in the lobby. He was polite but firm. There'd been a complaint filed about Bennett Industries' workplace safety protocols, and he was there to conduct a full audit. A complaint, Arya repeated carefully. From who? Anonymous, the inspector said, but we're required to follow up. The audit took 3 days. They went through every inch of the facility, checked every record, interviewed every supervisor. In the end, they found 2 minor violations: outdated signage in one storage area and a missing fire extinguisher in a rarely used wing. Both were corrected immediately, but the damage was done. The audit ate up time, resources, and employee morale. And it sent a message. Someone was watching, waiting for them to slip. Caleb didn't need to say who. They both knew. He's testing us, Arya said. They were in her office, door closed, going over the audit report. He's trying to rattle us, Caleb corrected. Make us waste time and energy on distractions. It's working. Caleb looked up from the report. No, it's not. We passed the audit. We fixed the issues. We kept moving forward. Barely. Barely is still moving. Arya leaned back in her chair, rubbed her temples. How long is he going to keep doing this? Until we give him a reason to stop. And what reason is that? Caleb set the report down. Prove we're untouchable. Close another big contract. Exceed every benchmark he sets. Make it impossible for him to justify interference. That's a tall order. You asked. Arya smiled despite the exhaustion. I did. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it, felt her stomach drop. It was a photo of her leaving the office late at night, grainy and obviously taken from a distance. No message, just the image. She showed it to Caleb without a word. His jaw tightened. When did you get this? Just now. Do you recognize the number? No. Caleb took her phone, studied the photo. This is surveillance. No kidding. I'm serious, Arya. Someone's watching you, documenting your movements. Your father. Probably, or someone working for him. Caleb handed the phone back. You need to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone after dark. Vary your routes. And if you get another message like this, let me know immediately. Arya wanted to argue, to say she didn't need protection, that she could handle herself. But the photo had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Okay, she said quietly. Caleb's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Neither did you. No. But we're in it now. The second warning came a week later. Arya was in a meeting with her board, a quarterly update that should have been routine. But halfway through her presentation, one of the board members, a man named Gerald Torres, interrupted. I've been reviewing the Ryder Capital partnership terms, Gerald said, and I have concerns. Arya kept her voice neutral. What kind of concerns? The kind where we're essentially handing operational control to an outside entity with no clear exit strategy. What happens if this arrangement falls apart? What protections do we have? We have a signed agreement, Arya said. Clear terms, transparent benchmarks. If either party breaches, there are consequences. Consequences that favor Ryder Capital, Gerald said. Not us. That's not accurate, isn't it? Gerald pulled out a document, slid it across the table. I had our legal team review the contract. There's a clause here that gives Ryder Capital the right to assume full control if Bennett Industries fails to meet quarterly revenue targets. Arya felt her pulse spike. She knew that clause. She'd negotiated it herself, believing the targets were achievable. But now, seeing it highlighted in red ink, it looked like a trap. The targets are reasonable, she said carefully. They're aggressive, Gerald countered. And with all the disruptions we've been facing, audits, inspections, supplier issues, I'm not convinced we can hit them. We will. You sound very confident for someone who's been CEO for less than a year. The room went quiet. Arya felt the eyes of every board member on her, assessing, judging. I'm confident, she said evenly, because we've already exceeded projections for the last 2 months. The Kellerman contract alone puts us ahead of schedule. And with Caleb Ryder managing operations, we're more efficient than we've been in years. Caleb Ryder, Gerald repeated. The son of the man who owns a controlling stake in this company. Forgive me if I don't find that reassuring. Caleb has been transparent and professional, Arya said, voice hardening. He saved this company money, secured new contracts, and worked harder than anyone in this room. If you have a problem with him, say so, but don't hide behind vague concerns about conflict of interest. Gerald leaned back, arms crossed. I'm saying we should be cautious about who we trust. I'm saying we should trust the people who show up and do the work. The tension was thick enough to cut. Finally, the board chair, an older woman named Diane Shu, cleared her throat. I think we've heard enough, Diane said. Gerald, your concerns are noted. Arya, continue with your presentation. Arya did, but the damage was done. She could feel the doubt in the room, the quiet questioning. Gerald had planted seeds, and they'd grow whether she wanted them to or not. After the meeting, she found Caleb waiting outside the boardroom. How bad? He asked. Bad enough. She filled him in on Gerald's ambush, the claws, the veiled accusations. Caleb listened, face unreadable. When she finished, he said, He's been bought. What? Gerald. My father got to him. Probably offered him a seat on Ryder Capital's board or a consulting contract. Something to make him turn. Arya felt sick. You're sure? No, but it fits the pattern. My father doesn't fight directly. He turns your allies against you. So what do? We prove Gerald wrong, hit every target, close every deal, and make it impossible for anyone to question our competence. That's a lot of pressure. It's what we signed up for. Arya laughed bitterly. I'm starting to regret that. Caleb's expression softened. You want out? She met his eyes. Do you? No. Then neither do I. They stood there in the hallway, the building quiet around them, and Arya realized something she hadn't expected. She didn't just trust Caleb. She relied on him, needed him, even. And that scared her more than Maxwell's surveillance or Gerald's betrayal. Come on, Caleb said, breaking the moment. Let's get back to work. The pressure intensified over the next 3 weeks. Deadlines were suddenly moved up without explanation. Suppliers who'd been reliable for years started delaying shipments. Inspectors showed up unannounced, demanding documentation for regulations Arya had never heard of. Every day brought a new crisis, a new obstacle designed to slow them down. But they didn't slow down. Caleb worked 18-hour days coordinating with suppliers, expediting orders, finding workarounds for every bureaucratic roadblock. Arya matched him hour for hour, managing client relationships, keeping the board in line, and putting out fires before they could spread. They barely saw daylight. One night, around 11, Arya found Caleb asleep at his desk, head resting on a stack of shipping manifests. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled. He looked younger like this, less guarded. She walked over quietly, draped her jacket over his shoulders. Caleb stirred, blinked up at her. "What time is it?" "Late, you should go home." "So should you." "I will, in a minute." Caleb sat up, rubbed his face. "I had the weirdest dream. We actually made it through all this without collapsing." Arya smiled faintly. "That's not a dream. That's the plan." "Plans change." "Not this one." Caleb looked at her and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or exhaustion so deep it felt like intimacy. "You're stubborn," he said. "You've mentioned that before." "It's still true." Arya pulled up a chair, sat down. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you really doing this? I know your father's pressuring you. I know you're trying to protect your daughter's future. But there's something else. I can feel it." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "When I was younger, I wanted to build things. Real things that mattered. I got a degree in engineering, worked on infrastructure projects, helped design systems that made people's lives better. Then my father pulled me into the family business, and suddenly I wasn't building anymore. I was just moving money around, acquiring companies, stripping them for parts." He paused, looked at his hands. "I forgot what it felt like to actually create something, to help something grow instead of just dismantling it. And then I met you and I saw this company your family built, and I thought, maybe I can remember. Maybe I can be the person I used to want to be." Arya's throat tightened. "That's a lot to put on a 6-month contract." "I know, but it's the truth." She reached across the desk, covered his hand with hers. "Thank you for being honest." Caleb looked at their hands, then at her face. "You're welcome." They stayed like that for a moment, the office silent around them. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "What?" Arya asked. "Email from my father's office. He wants a face-to-face meeting tomorrow morning." "About what?" "Doesn't say." Arya felt dread settle in her stomach. "That's not good." "No," Caleb agreed. "It's not." The meeting was at 8 a.m. sharp. Arya and Caleb arrived together, a united front. Maxwell's office was on the top floor of Ryder Capital, all glass and steel and power. They were ushered in by a stone-faced assistant and left to wait. Maxwell arrived 10 minutes late, a calculated move. He didn't apologize. "Thank you for coming," he said, settling into his chair. "I wanted to discuss the progress, or lack thereof, at Bennett Industries." "We're meeting every benchmark," Caleb said immediately. "Barely. The contract specifies minimum performance standards. We're exceeding them." Maxwell smiled, cold and sharp. "You're exceeding them now, but I've reviewed the projections. The Kellerman contract is demanding. One missed deadline, one quality issue, and you're in breach. That puts Bennett Industries in a very vulnerable position." "We're managing it," Arya said. "Are you?" Maxwell pulled out a tablet, slid it across the desk. "I have reports from 3 different inspectors citing ongoing compliance issues. Minor, yes, but recurring. That suggests systemic problems." Arya glanced at the tablet. The reports were real, but they were also misleading. Each issue had been addressed immediately. Nothing was ongoing. "Those issues were resolved," she said, "but they keep happening, which tells me your quality control is insufficient." "It tells you we're being targeted," Caleb said flatly. "Every inspection has been triggered by anonymous complaints. Every delay has been caused by suppliers who suddenly change terms without explanation. You're sabotaging us and then blaming us for the damage." Maxwell's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation." It's the truth. Prove it. Caleb leaned forward. I don't have to prove it. You know what you're doing, and so do we. For the first time, Maxwell looked genuinely interested. And what are you going to do about it? Keep working, Caleb said. Keep hitting targets. Keep proving you wrong. Maxwell laughed, low and humorless. You think this is about being wrong? This is about control. Bennett Industries is a chess piece, and I'm deciding where it goes. You're just moving it for me. Not anymore, Arya said. Maxwell's gaze shifted to her. Excuse me? You wanted us to fail. We didn't. You wanted us to fold under pressure. We didn't. And now you're scrambling because we're actually succeeding, and you don't know how to spin that. Careful, Ms. Bennett. I'm done being careful. You set the terms. We're meeting them. If you try to change the rules again, I'll take this to the press. Let them know how Maxwell Ryder destroys companies instead of saving them. The room went deadly silent. Maxwell stood slowly, buttoned his jacket. You're playing a dangerous game. So are you, Arya said. Maxwell looked at Caleb. You're allowing this? I'm standing beside her, Caleb said quietly. There's a difference. Something flickered across Maxwell's face, anger maybe, or disappointment. Then it was gone, replaced by that cold, empty smile. Fine, he said. We'll see how long you last. He walked out without another word. Arya exhaled slowly, realized her hands were shaking. Caleb was staring at the closed door, jaw clenched. That was stupid, he said. Probably. He's going to come after us harder now. I know. Caleb turned to her. Then why did you do it? Because I'm tired of being scared, and because someone needed to tell him no. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, then we do this the hard way. Was there an easy way? Not really. They left the building together, stepped out into the morning light. The city was waking up around them, people rushing to work, traffic building. Arya felt raw, exposed, like she'd just jumped off a cliff and was still waiting to see if there was water below. What happens now? She asked. Caleb glanced at her. Now we survive. Whatever he throws at us, we survive. That's not much of a plan. It's the only one we've got. Arya wanted to argue, to demand something more concrete, more reassuring, but she knew Caleb was right. They were in free fall now, and the only thing they could do was hold on and hope they landed somewhere they could stand. The retaliation came fast. 2 days after the meeting, Bennett Industries received notice that their primary supplier was terminating their contract effective immediately. No explanation, no warning, just a cold legal notification. Caleb spent 6 hours on the phone trying to negotiate, to understand, to salvage something. The supplier's response was polite but final. They were restructuring their client list, and Bennett Industries no longer fit their strategic priorities. It was corporate speak for, we were paid to walk away. Arya found 3 backup suppliers within 24 hours. None of them could match the original pricing or delivery speed, but they could keep production running, barely. Then the Kellerman contract hit a snag, a quality control issue on the first major shipment. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to trigger a penalty clause. Arya and Caleb scrambled to fix it, working with Marcus and the production team to identify the problem and implement corrections. They got it done, but it cost them time and money they didn't have. Then another inspector showed up. Then another supplier delayed a shipment. Then Gerald Torres called an emergency board meeting to discuss ongoing concerns about leadership. It was relentless. Arya stopped sleeping. She'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, running scenarios, calculating risk, wondering how much more they could take before something broke. One night, her phone rang at 2 a.m. She answered without checking the caller ID, expecting another crisis. Hello? It's me, Caleb's voice, quiet and rough. You awake? Unfortunately. Can't sleep either? Haven't really tried. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about what my father said, about us being chess pieces. And I hate that he's right. Arya sat up, pulled her knees to her chest. He's not right. We're making our own moves. Are we? Or are we just reacting to his? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because if we're just reacting, we'll never get ahead. We'll just keep surviving until we can't anymore. Arya closed her eyes. So what do? We stop playing defense. We go on offense. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Caleb, I will, he said, and there was steel in his voice. I'm not letting him win. Not this time. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about nothing and everything. Caleb told her about his daughter, about the bedtime stories he used to read before work consumed his life. Arya told him about her grandfather, about the day he'd taken her through the factory floor and told her it would be hers someday. It felt like confession, like sharing something sacred. When they finally hung up, Arya felt lighter. Not hopeful, exactly, but less alone. And in the darkness of her bedroom, that was enough. The offensive move came a week later. Caleb walked into Arya's office with a folder and a look she'd come to recognize, the one that meant he'd found something. What? She asked. I've been digging into the suppliers who dropped us, cross-referencing contracts, financial records, board connections. And 3 of them have ties to Ryder Capital subsidiaries. Not direct ownership, but enough overlap that my father could apply pressure. Arya leaned forward. Can we prove it? Not in court, but I can leak it to the press. Let them draw their own conclusions. That's risky. Everything's risky right now. Arya considered it. If they went public with the information, it would damage Maxwell's reputation, but it would also escalate the war, and she wasn't sure they could survive that. What if it backfires, she asked. Then we're no worse off than we are now. That's not true. We could lose everything. Caleb set the folder down. Arya, we're already losing, slowly, piece by piece. At least this way we're fighting back. She looked at him, saw the determination in his eyes, the exhaustion underneath. He was right. They couldn't keep playing defense forever. Okay, she said, do it. Caleb nodded, picked up the folder. I'll reach out to a contact at the Business Journal. Someone I trust. Be careful. I will. He turned to leave, then stopped. Arya? Yeah? Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for giving me a reason to. Caleb smiled, brief and real, and then he was gone. The story broke 2 days later. It wasn't front page, but it was prominent enough. A detailed investigation into Ryder Capital's business practices, highlighting suspicious patterns in supplier contracts and corporate acquisitions. Maxwell Ryder wasn't named directly, but the connections were clear. The fallout was immediate. Maxwell called Caleb within an hour of the story going live. Arya was in Caleb's office when it happened, could hear the anger in Maxwell's voice even through the phone. Caleb listened for a moment, then cut him off. I didn't do anything illegal, Caleb said calmly. I provided information to a journalist. That's not a crime. Maxwell's response was sharp, biting. You can threaten me all you want, Caleb continued, but the truth is out now. And if you come after Bennett Industries any harder, people will notice. They'll connect the dots. You'll lose more than you gain. More shouting. No, Caleb said, voice hard. I'm done. You pushed too far and now you're dealing with the consequences. If you want to salvage your reputation, back off. He hung up. Arya stared at him. Did you just... Yeah. You hung up on your father. Yeah. He's going to destroy you. Caleb looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he looked calm, at peace. Maybe, he said, but at least I'll go down fighting. Arya felt something shift in her chest, something warm and terrifying and undeniable. She was falling for him, not the idea of him, not the partnership or the convenience. Him, the man who'd walked into her life as part of a trap and had somehow become the person she trusted most in the world. Caleb, she started, but didn't know how to finish. He met her eyes, and she saw it there too. The recognition, the fear, the impossible hope. I know, he said quietly. They stood there in the small office, the afternoon light slanting through the blinds, and Arya knew that whatever happened next, they were in it together, for better or worse. The silence between them stretched for 3 heartbeats before Caleb's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. It's the board, he said. His board or mine? Mine. Former mine. He let it ring. They'll want damage control, an explanation, probably my resignation. Arya's stomach dropped. You can't resign. We need you. I'm not resigning, Caleb said quietly. I'm just acknowledging that everything's about to get worse. He wasn't wrong. By the end of the day, 3 business outlets had picked up the story. By morning, it was national news. Maxwell Ryder, billionaire investor and corporate strategist, accused of market manipulation and predatory acquisition practices. The article didn't name Bennett Industries specifically, but anyone paying attention could connect the dots. Arya's phone exploded with calls. Investors wanting reassurance, board members demanding explanations, reporters asking for comments. She ignored most of them, fielded the critical ones, and tried to keep her hands from shaking. Caleb was in back-to-back calls with his own contacts, trying to contain the fallout on his end. She could hear his voice through the wall, calm and measured, explaining the same things over and over. Yes, he'd provided information. No, he didn't regret it. Yes, he understood the implications. Around noon, Laura knocked on Arya's door. "You need to see this," Laura said, handing over her tablet. It was an email from Gerald Torres to the full board, subject line urgent. Arya skimmed it, felt her blood run cold. Gerald was calling for an immediate vote of no confidence. He cited the media coverage, the association with Ryder Capital's scandal, and what he called Arya's reckless decision-making. The vote was scheduled for Friday, 3 days away. "He's making his move," Laura said. "He's been planning this," Arya corrected. "The story just gave him cover." "Can you stop it?"
"I don't know." Laura sat down, studied her. "What do you need?" Arya looked up, surprised. "What?" "You've been fighting this alone for months. Well, you and Ryder, but the rest of us have just been watching, so I'm asking, what do you need from us?" Arya's throat tightened. She'd been so focused on survival that she'd forgotten she had a team. People who'd built their careers at Bennett Industries, who cared about it as much as she did.
"I need you to talk to the board," Arya said. "Show them the numbers, the contracts we've closed, the revenue we've generated, the improvements we've made. Gerald's painting this as chaos, but the data tells a different story. And if they don't listen, then we lose." Laura nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll talk to David and Marcus. We'll put together a presentation." "Laura, don't thank me yet, just don't screw this up." Arya smiled despite everything. "I'll try." After Laura left, Arya sat alone in her office, staring at the email. 3 days. That's all she had to save her company and her career. She heard footsteps in the hallway, looked up to see Caleb in the doorway. "How bad?" he asked. "Vote of no confidence, Friday." Caleb's expression darkened. "Gerald? Who else?" He walked in, closed the door behind him. "We can fight this." "How?" "Half the board already doubts me. This scandal just confirmed their worst fears. The scandal also exposed my father. That gives you leverage." "What leverage?" "I'm associated with you, which means I'm associated with him. That's not an advantage, Caleb. That's a liability." "Then we change the narrative," Caleb said. "We show them you're not complicit. You're a victim who fought back." Arya laughed bitterly. "I don't want to be a victim." "I know, but right now it's better than being seen as an accomplice." She wanted to argue, but he was right. Perception mattered more than truth in situations like this. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Caleb pulled up a chair, sat down across from her. "We need to separate you from my father completely. Make it clear that you were targeted, not partnered. That means going public with everything, the manipulation, the sabotage, the pressure. That exposes you too." "I'm already exposed." "Caleb." "Arya, I made a choice when I leaked that story. I knew what it would cost me. Now we finish what we started." She looked at him, saw the determination in his eyes, the exhaustion underneath. He was willing to sacrifice everything. For her company. For her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Caleb didn't answer immediately. He looked at his hands, then back at her. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about a contract," he said. "And I don't know when that happened, but it did." Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. "Caleb, I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted. "I'm just telling you why I'm still here." The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Arya knew if she said what she was thinking, if she acknowledged what was building between them, everything would change. But maybe it already had. "I'm glad you're still here," she said finally. Caleb's expression softened. "Yeah? Yeah."
They sat there for a moment, the office quiet around them. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "What now?" Arya asked. "Invitation to a gala Friday night." Arya's stomach sank. "The Prestige Foundation event." "You know it?" "Everyone knows it. It's the biggest corporate networking event of the year. Politicians, investors, media. If you're anyone in this city, you're there."
Caleb scrolled through the email. "My father's being honored. Lifetime Achievement Award for Corporate Leadership." "You're kidding." "I wish I was." Arya stood, paced to the window. "He's doing this on purpose. The timing isn't coincidental." "No, it's not. He wants to humiliate you, force you to either show up and play nice or skip it and look petty." "Probably." Arya turned back to him. "So what are you going to do?" Caleb set his phone down, met her eyes. "I'm going to go. And you're coming with me." "Absolutely not." "Hear me out." "Caleb, that's a terrible idea. Your father will destroy me in front of everyone who matters." "Or," Caleb said, standing, "we show up together and make it clear you're not afraid of him, that you're not hiding, that you're fighting back." "That's insane." "Maybe. But it's also the only move that doesn't look like retreat." Arya wanted to refuse, to tell him it was too risky, too public, too everything. But he was right. Hiding would confirm every doubt Gerald and the board had. Showing up, facing Maxwell directly, that sent a different message. "If I do this," she said slowly, "we do it on our terms. No apologies, no backing down." "Agreed." "And if it goes badly, it probably will." "That's not reassuring," Caleb smiled faintly. "I'm done being reassuring. I'm just being honest." Arya exhaled slowly. "Okay, I'll go." "Yeah?" "Yeah, but I'm not wearing anything boring." "Wouldn't expect you to." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation and crisis management. Laura, David, and Marcus put together a presentation for the board that was sharp, data-driven, and impossible to dismiss. Arya rehearsed her talking points until she could deliver them in her sleep. Caleb worked behind the scenes, reaching out to contacts, building support, trying to shore up votes. But Gerald had momentum. And Maxwell's scandal, instead of hurting their opposition, had somehow strengthened it. The narrative had shifted from Arya saves company to Arya tied to corrupt billionaire, and that was harder to fight. Thursday night, Arya stayed late at the office, going over the presentation one more time. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Caleb in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," he said. She took the cup gratefully. "You're a lifesaver." "I try." He sat down, and they worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Caleb said, "I talked to my daughter today." Arya looked up. "How is she?" "Confused. She asked why I'm never home anymore." "What did you tell her?" "That Daddy's helping someone, that it's important." "And?" Caleb smiled sadly. "She asked if helping people means you don't get to see your family." Arya's chest tightened. "What did you say?" "I told her that sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, that sometimes doing the right thing costs more than we want to pay." He paused. "She said that sounded sad." "She's not wrong." "No, she's not." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Arya said, "When this is over, whether we win or lose, you should take time off. Be with her." "I will." "I mean it, Caleb. She needs you more than I do." Caleb looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. "What if I'm not ready to stop helping you?" Arya's breath caught. "Caleb, I know the contract ends in 3 months. I know this was supposed to be temporary, but I don't want it to be." "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. I've known for weeks. I just didn't want to admit it because it complicates everything." "It does complicate everything." "I don't care." Arya set down her coffee, stood up. "You should care. Your father's already trying to destroy you. If he thinks there's something between us, he'll use it as leverage." "Let him." "Caleb, Arya, I'm tired of making decisions based on what my father might do. I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm really tired of pretending I don't feel something for you." The words hung in the air between them, undeniable. Arya wanted to tell him he was wrong, that this was just stress and proximity and desperation. But she couldn't. Because she felt it too. The pull, the connection, The impossible, terrifying certainty that somewhere along the way, this had become more than partnership. "This is a bad idea," she said quietly. "Probably. We're in the middle of a war." "I know. And if we do this, we can't take it back." Caleb stood, crossed to where she was standing. "I don't want to take it back." He was close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the exhaustion and determination written across his face. "Caleb," she whispered. "Tell me to stop," he said. "If you don't want this, tell me to stop, and I will." She should. She knew she should, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she reached up, touched his face, and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and messy and full of everything they'd been holding back for months. Caleb's arms came around her, pulling her closer, and Arya felt something inside her break open, all the fear and loneliness and exhaustion pouring out. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "We're idiots," he said. "Complete idiots," Arya agreed. "This is going to make everything harder." "I know." "And we're still doing it?" Arya pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Yeah, we're still doing it." Caleb smiled, real and unguarded. "Okay then." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped up in each other, the office quiet around them. Then Arya's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She pulled away reluctantly, checked the message. Her face went pale. "What?" Caleb asked. "It's from an unknown number, another photo." She turned the phone so he could see. It was a picture of them, taken through the office window. Recent, probably within the last hour. They were sitting close, talking, the intimacy obvious even in the grainy image. "He's watching us," Arya said. "Not just watching, documenting." "For what?" Caleb's expression hardened. "Leverage. He's building a case against you. Against us." Arya felt cold spread through her chest. "The vote's tomorrow." "I know. If he releases this photo, if he makes it look like we're compromised," Caleb finished. "Yeah. The board will crucify me." "Not if we get ahead of it." Arya looked at him. "How?" "We tell the truth. Not about us, not yet, but about everything else. We release a statement tonight explaining exactly what my father did, how he manipulated the market, how he targeted Bennett Industries. We make it clear you were a victim who fought back, and I was the one who helped you. That still ties us together. But it changes the context. It makes you the hero instead of the accomplice." Arya wanted to believe it would work, but Maxwell had been playing this game longer than either of them. "What if it's not enough?" she asked. "Then at least we tried." They worked through the night drafting the statement. It was careful, measured, and damning. They named Maxwell's tactics without making accusations they couldn't prove. They outlined the timeline, the pressure, the sabotage. And they made it clear that Caleb had acted against his father's interests to protect Bennett Industries. At 3 a.m., they sent it to a carefully selected list of journalists and business contacts. At 4 a.m., it started to spread. By dawn, it was everywhere. Friday morning arrived with the weight of a storm about to break. Arya dressed carefully for the board meeting, a sharp navy suit, hair pulled back, minimal jewelry. She wanted to look competent, controlled, unshakable, even if she felt like she was coming apart at the seams. Caleb picked her up at 8. He looked as exhausted as she felt, but his eyes were clear, focused. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's do it anyway." The meeting was scheduled for 9. They arrived at 8:30, walked into the conference room together. The board was already assembled, faces grave. Gerald sat at the far end, looking smug. Diane Shu called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss a vote of no confidence in CEO Arya Bennett," Diane said. "Gerald Torres has raised concerns about Ms. Bennett's leadership, particularly regarding the recent scandal involving Ryder Capital. Ms. Bennett, you have the floor." Arya stood, her hands were steady, her voice was clear. "Thank you, Diane. I want to start by acknowledging that the last few months have been difficult. Bennett Industries was targeted by a coordinated effort to destabilize our operations and force a hostile acquisition. That effort was led by Maxwell Ryder, who used his resources and connections to manipulate suppliers, trigger frivolous inspections, and undermine our credibility." Gerald interrupted. "And you partnered with his son. How does that help your case?" "Caleb Ryder acted against his father's interests," Arya said evenly. "He provided the oversight and expertise that allowed us to stabilize the company. He also exposed his father's tactics at significant personal cost. Without him, Bennett Industries would have been dismantled months ago. So we should be grateful to the writers, Gerald said. One of them tries to destroy us, and the other plays hero?
Caleb is a hero, Arya said, and I'm grateful to him. But more importantly, the numbers speak for themselves. She nodded to Laura, who pulled up the presentation. Revenue growth, contract acquisitions, operational efficiency. Every metric showed improvement.
This is what we've accomplished in 4 months, Arya said. Despite active sabotage, despite constant interference, we've not only survived, we've grown. If you vote me out now, you're not protecting this company. You're finishing what Maxwell writers started. The room was silent. Then one of the board members, an older man named Robert Kim, spoke up. I've reviewed the data, Robert said. Ms. Bennett is right. The company is stronger now than it was 6 months ago. The association with the writer scandal is unfortunate, but it's not indicative of poor leadership. It's indicative of poor judgment, Gerald countered. Poor judgment would have been taking Maxwell Writer's original deal, Robert said. Ms. Bennett negotiated better terms and fought back when he escalated. That's not poor judgment, that's courage. Other board members nodded. Arya felt hope flicker in her chest. We should vote, Diane said. The vote was close, too close. But when the final count came in, Arya had won, 7-5. She'd kept her job. Barely. As the board filed out, Gerald stopped beside her. This isn't over, he said quietly. I know, Arya replied. He left without another word. Caleb was waiting in the hallway. Well? I won. Relief flooded his face. Good. It was close. But you won. Arya nodded, felt the exhaustion hit her all at once. Yeah, I did. They had 4 hours before the gala. Arya went home, tried to sleep. Couldn't. She showered, did her makeup, stared at her closet. She told Caleb she wouldn't wear anything boring. Now she had to deliver. She chose a dress she'd bought on impulse months ago and never worn. Deep emerald green, fitted, elegant, but not overdone. It made her feel powerful. She needed that tonight. Caleb picked her up at 6. He was in a tuxedo, looking uncomfortable but devastatingly handsome. You clean up well, Arya said. You look incredible, Caleb replied. They drove to the venue in silence, both lost in thought. The gala was being held at the Grand Metropolitan, the city's most prestigious hotel. Cameras lined the entrance, photographers snapping pictures of arriving guests. Last chance to turn back, Caleb said. Not a chance. They stepped out of the car together. Flashbulbs exploded. Arya kept her head high, her hand light on Caleb's arm. Inside, the ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows, hundreds of elegantly dressed people mingling with champagne and ambition. Arya recognized faces from the news, from board meetings, from the endless networking events that defined this world. And at the center of it all, surrounded by admirers, stood Maxwell Writer. He saw them immediately. His expression didn't change, but Arya felt the shift in the room, the subtle turn of heads, the whispered conversations. He knows we're here, she said quietly. Good, Caleb replied. They made their way through the crowd, stopped to talk with a few contacts, kept moving. Arya felt eyes on her the entire time, assessing, judging. Then Maxwell approached. Caleb, he said, voice smooth. Miss Bennett, I'm surprised to see you here. I was invited, Caleb said evenly. So was everyone in this room. That doesn't mean showing up was wise. Wise isn't really our style anymore, so Arya said. Maxwell's smile was cold. Clearly. He turned his attention to Caleb. I'm being honored tonight. You should stay for the speech. I wouldn't miss it. Good. I think you'll find it illuminating. He walked away, leaving them standing in the middle of the ballroom. That was a threat, Arya said. Everything he says is a threat. An hour later, the speeches began. Maxwell took the stage to thunderous applause, accepted his award with practiced humility. Then he started talking. I've spent my career building businesses, creating opportunity, and helping companies reach their potential, Maxwell said. But recently I've learned that not everyone appreciates those efforts. Some people see partnership as oppression. They see guidance as control. Arya's hands clenched. I want to address the recent allegations, Maxwell continued. There have been claims of market manipulation, of predatory practices. These claims are categorically false. What I've done is provide struggling companies with the resources they need to survive. If some people chose to reject that help and instead fabricate stories to justify their own failures, that's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility. The room was silent, transfixed. However, Maxwell said, I want to be clear about one thing. When trust is broken, there are consequences. When someone within your own organization betrays you, acts against your interests, and damages your reputation, those consequences must be swift and decisive. He looked directly at Caleb, which is why I'm announcing tonight that Caleb Ryder is no longer affiliated with Ryder Capital in any capacity. His shares have been revoked, his positions terminated, and his access to family assets frozen, effective immediately. The room erupted in murmurs. Arya felt Caleb stiffen beside her. She grabbed his hand, held tight. Furthermore, Maxwell continued, I'm calling for an investigation into Bennett Industries' recent business practices, including their partnership with my former son. If there's been any impropriety, it will be brought to light. He smiled, cold and triumphant. Thank you for this honor. I'll continue to serve this community with integrity and transparency. Applause filled the room, but Arya barely heard it over the roaring in her ears. Maxwell had just destroyed Caleb publicly, cut him off, disowned him, and painted him as a traitor. And the investigation into Bennett Industries, that was the final trap. Maxwell was coming for both of them now. Caleb's face was pale but composed. We should go. No, Arya said. Arya, no, we're not running. She pulled away from him, walked straight toward the stage. Maxwell was stepping down, surrounded by congratulatory handshakes. Arya pushed through the crowd, stopped directly in front of him. You're a coward, she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Maxwell's expression didn't change. Ms. Bennett, you sabotaged my company, manipulated the market, and when that didn't work, you went after your own son. And now you're hiding behind awards and investigations because you can't stand the fact that we beat you. The room had gone silent. You didn't beat me, Maxwell said quietly. You delayed me. There's a difference. We'll see about that. She turned and walked away, heart pounding, Caleb falling into step beside her. They made it to the lobby before the full weight of what she'd done hit her. I just accused Maxwell Ryder of corporate sabotage in front of half the city's business elite, she said. Yeah, Caleb said. You did. That was stupid. Probably. He's going to destroy us. Caleb stopped, turns to face her. Maybe. But you stood up to him. In public. That matters. It doesn't matter if we lose everything. We're not going to lose everything. How can you be so sure? Caleb took her hands, held them tight. Because we're still standing. After everything he's thrown at us, we're still here. And as long as we're standing, we've got a chance. Arya looked at him, saw the determination in his eyes, the fierce, stubborn hope. Okay, she said. Then let's finish this. They walked out of the hotel together, cameras flashing, questions shouted from every direction. And somewhere above them, watching from a window, Maxwell Ryder smiled. The war had just begun. The story hit the morning news before Arya's alarm went off. She woke to her phone vibrating non-stop, rolled over to see 17 missed calls and twice as many messages. The first headline she saw made her stomach drop. Bennett CEO confronts billionaire at charity gala. Accusations fly. The video had already gone viral. Someone had filmed the entire exchange. Arya walking up to Maxwell, the accusation, his cold response, her walking away. The comments section was a war zone. Half called her brave, the other half called her reckless, unstable, desperate. She sat up in bed, scrolled through the coverage with mounting dread. Every outlet had picked it up. Business journals, gossip sites, even mainstream news. Her face was everywhere, frozen in that moment of confrontation, looking angry and scared and defiant all at once. Her phone rang. Laura. Tell me you've seen it, Laura said without preamble. I've seen it. The board's going insane. Diane's called 3 emergency meetings for today. Gerald's already circulating a new petition. Arya closed her eyes. Of course he is. Arya, this is bad. I mean really bad. You just accused the most powerful man in the city of corporate sabotage on camera. He's going to bury you. I know. So what's the plan? I don't know yet. Laura was quiet for a moment. Okay. Well, figure it out fast because we're all going down with you if you don't. The line went dead. Arya sat there in the silence of her bedroom, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. She'd gambled everything on one moment of anger, one public stand, and now she had to live with the consequences. Her phone rang again, Caleb this time. "You okay?" he asked. "No, you?" "Not even a little bit." Despite everything, Arya almost smiled. "Where are you?" "Sitting in my car outside my sister's place. I was supposed to pick up my daughter an hour ago, but I can't stop watching the news." "Have you talked to anyone from Ryder Capital?" "My lawyers called. They're drawing up severance documents. Apparently when my father said effective immediately, he meant it. I'm officially cut off." Arya heard the strain in his voice, the barely controlled panic underneath. "Caleb, it's fine. I expected it." "It's not fine." "No," he admitted. "It's really not. But we don't have time to process it right now. My father's moving fast. The investigation he mentioned, it's already started. His legal team filed a formal complaint with the Commerce Board this morning." "Complaint about what?" "Everything. Fraudulent financial reporting, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to commit fraud. They're throwing every charge they can at Bennett Industries." Arya felt sick. Can they make it stick? If they dig deep enough, they'll find something. Every company has vulnerabilities, and my father knows exactly where to look. "So what do we do?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "We fight back. Harder than before." "How?" "I'm working on it. Can you meet me at your office in an hour?" "Yeah?" "Good. Don't talk to anyone until then. Not the board, not the press, no one." "Caleb, 1 hour, Arya. We'll figure this out." He hung up before she could respond. Arya got dressed mechanically, her mind racing. The investigation would take weeks, maybe months, but the damage would be immediate. Investors would panic. Clients would reconsider contracts. The board would use it as ammunition to force her out. Unless she could prove Maxwell was lying, unless she could turn this around. She arrived at Bennett Industries to find reporters camped outside the building. They swarmed her car the moment she pulled into the parking garage, shouting questions, shoving microphones at her window. She kept her eyes forward, drove past them, parked in her reserved spot. Inside the office was eerily quiet. People looked at her as she walked past, their expressions ranging from sympathy to fear. No one said anything. Caleb was already in her office, laptop open, surrounded by papers. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Tell me you have good news," Arya said, closing the door. "I have news. Whether it's good depends on your definition." "Caleb, my father's investigation is theater," Caleb said. "It's designed to make you look guilty while he positions himself as the concerned investor protecting shareholder value. The actual legal case is weak. His lawyers know it, he knows it, but it doesn't matter because the optics are destroying you." "So we're screwed." "Not necessarily." Caleb pulled up a document on his laptop. "I've been going through Ryder Capital's acquisition history. There's a pattern. He's done this before, targeted companies, manufactured crises, forced desperate deals. But there's one case from 8 years ago that's interesting." He turned the laptop toward her. Arya scanned the document, a lawsuit filed by a small tech company against Ryder Capital for predatory acquisition practices. They sued him and won. Settlement was confidential, but the preliminary findings are public record. The judge ruled there was evidence of market manipulation and intentional sabotage. Arya looked up. "Why didn't this destroy him?" "Because he settled before it went to trial, paid them off, made them sign NDAs, and buried the story. But the court documents are still accessible, and they establish a pattern of behavior. So we use this to prove he did the same thing to us." "Exactly. We file a countersuit, not just defending against his investigation, but going on offense. We accuse him of the same tactics he used 8 years ago, show the pattern, and force him to either fight in court or settle." Arya sat down, trying to process it. "That's a massive risk. If we lose everything anyway," Caleb said. "This way, at least we're fighting." "And you're sure about the case from 8 years ago?" "I verified the documents. They're legitimate." Arya looked at him, saw the determination in his eyes, the absolute conviction. He'd turned against his own father, sacrificed his career and his inheritance, all to help her, and now he was asking her to trust him one more time. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." Caleb nodded, pulled out his phone. "I'll call our lawyers. Get them started on the filing. Wait! Arya stood, walked to the window. Outside, the reporters were still waiting, cameras pointed at the building like weapons. If we do this, there's no going back. Your father will come after you even harder. I know. You'll lose everything, Caleb. Your family, your money, your reputation, all of it. I've already lost most of it. But not all. You could still walk away, make peace with him, rebuild. Caleb stood, crossed to where she was standing. I don't want to rebuild with him. I want to build something new. With you. Arya turned to face him. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I've known for weeks. He took her hands, held them tight. I'm not walking away, Arya. Not from this, not from you. So stop trying to give me an out. She wanted to argue, to protect him from his own conviction. But the words wouldn't come, because she didn't want him to walk away either. Okay, she whispered. Then we do this together. Together, Caleb agreed. The lawsuit was filed Monday morning. The media response was immediate and explosive. Bennett Industries CEO countersues Maxwell Ryder for corporate sabotage. The story dominated every business outlet, every news channel. Legal experts weighed in, calling it either brilliant or suicidal depending on their perspective. Arya's board called an emergency meeting within hours. She walked into that conference room knowing it could be her last time. The faces around the table were grim. Even Laura looked worried. Diane started without preamble. Arya, what the hell are you thinking? I'm thinking Maxwell Ryder has been lying about his intentions from the beginning, and it's time someone held him accountable. By suing him, Gerald said. You just declared war on the most powerful investor in the region. He'll destroy this company out of spite. He's already trying to destroy it, Arya shot back. The investigation, the media campaign, the supplier pressure, it's all part of the same strategy. We're just refusing to die quietly. This lawsuit is reckless, Gerald continued. It exposes us to massive legal costs, puts every decision we've made under scrutiny, and makes us look desperate. We are desperate, Arya said. But we're also right. Maxwell Ryder targeted this company for acquisition, sabotaged our operations when we resisted, and is now using a fraudulent investigation to finish the job. We have documentation, we have precedent, and we have a case. Robert Kim spoke up. What precedent? Caleb, who'd been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. 8 years ago, Ryder Capital settled a lawsuit with Meridian Technologies for the exact same tactics. Market manipulation, supplier interference, and fabricated compliance issues. The case never went to trial, but the preliminary findings are damning. And you're certain this is admissible? Diane asked. Our lawyers believe so, Caleb said. It establishes a pattern of behavior. Combined with the documentation we have of the recent sabotage, it builds a strong case. Gerald shook his head. Even if you're right, Maxwell has unlimited resources. He can drag this out for years, bankrupt us with legal fees alone. Then we settle, Arya said. But we settle from a position of strength, not desperation. We make him negotiate. And if he refuses? Then we go to trial and let a jury decide. The room was silent. Arya could see the board members exchanging glances, calculating risk, weighing options. Finally, Diane said, This is a vote. All in favor of supporting the lawsuit and Arya's continued leadership, raise your hand. Arya held her breath. Laura's hand went up immediately. Robert's followed. 2 others raised theirs slowly. 5 votes. Gerald and his allies kept their hands down. 6 votes against. Arya's stomach dropped. She'd lost. But then Diane raised her hand. I'm voting in favor, Diane said. Not because I think this is a good idea, but because Arya's right. We're already at war. We might as well fight back. 6-6. A tie. As board chair, Diane had the deciding vote. She'd just saved Arya's position. The lawsuit proceeds, Diane said. But Arya, if this goes sideways, I won't protect you again. Understood? Understood, Arya said. The meeting adjourned. As people filed out, Laura grabbed Arya's arm. You just bet the entire company on a lawsuit, Laura said quietly. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Arya admitted. Over the next 2 weeks, everything escalated. Maxwell's legal team responded to the lawsuit with a countersuit of their own, claiming defamation and business interference. The media turned it into a spectacle, covering every filing, every motion, every court appearance like it was a championship bout. Arya stopped sleeping. She'd lie in bed running through scenarios, calculating outcomes, trying to find an angle she'd missed. The pressure was constant, suffocating. Caleb was worse. He'd moved into a small apartment after his father froze his assets, sold his car to pay for basics, and was living off savings that wouldn't last another month. But he showed up every day, worked every hour, and never once complained. One night, Arya found him in his office at midnight, staring at his laptop screen with bloodshot eyes. "You should go home," she said from the doorway. "Can't afford the electricity bill," Caleb said without looking up. "Figured I'd work here where it's free." Arya walked in, sat down. "Caleb, I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're broke, exhausted, and fighting your own father in court. That's not fine." Caleb finally looked at her. "What do you want me to say? That I'm scared? That I wake up every morning wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life?" "I am, Arya. I'm terrified. But I'm also not stopping." "Why not?" "Because if I stop now, everything I've sacrificed means nothing. My relationship with my father, my daughter's trust fund, my career, all of it gone for nothing. The only way it matters is if we win." Arya reached across the desk, took his hand. "We're going to win. You don't know that." "No, but I believe it. And you should too." Caleb's expression softened slightly. "When did you become the optimistic one?" "When you started falling apart. Someone had to balance things out." He laughed, tired and genuine. "Fair point." They sat there for a while, hands clasped, drawing strength from each other. Then Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. "It's my sister. She never calls this late." He answered, and Arya watched his face go pale. "What? When? Is she okay?" He stood abruptly. "I'm coming right now. Don't let her leave." He hung up, grabbed his jacket. "What happened?" Arya asked. "My daughter. She ran away from my sister's house. Showed up at my old apartment looking for me. She's scared and confused and—" His voice cracked. "I need to go." "Of course, go." Caleb hesitated at the door. "Arya?" "Go, Caleb. Your daughter needs you." He nodded, left. Arya sat alone in this quiet office, feeling the weight of what they'd done settle over her. They were fighting a war on every front, legal, financial, personal. And now it was affecting Caleb's daughter, an innocent kid who just wanted her father back. She closed her eyes, tried not to think about what she'd do if they lost. Caleb didn't come in the next day, or the day after that. Arya handled the crisis management alone, fielding calls from lawyers, meeting with the board, managing the media storm. She told herself it was fine, that Caleb needed time with his daughter, that they could manage without him for a few days. But she missed him, missed his steady presence, his quiet strength, the way he made her feel less alone. On the third day, he finally called. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have checked in sooner." "Don't apologize. How's your daughter?" "Confused, angry. She doesn't understand why we're not living in our old house anymore, why her schedule keeps changing, why I'm never around." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That Daddy made some choices that upset Grandpa, and now things are different. That it's going to be hard for a while, but we'll get through it." And she asked if it was her fault. Arya's chest tightened. "Oh, Caleb, I told her no, that none of this is her fault, but I don't think she believed me." He paused. "I'm thinking about pulling out of the lawsuit." "What?" "Not all the way, but stepping back, letting you fight this without me. My presence is making it worse for everyone. You, the company, my daughter. Caleb, we need you. You need someone who can focus, who's not constantly worried about custody battles and whether their kid is going to be okay. That's not me right now." Arya felt panic rise in her chest. "Don't do this. Don't give up." "I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic." "You're being scared." "Of course I'm scared," Caleb's voice cracked. "I'm watching my daughter fall apart, Arya. I can't pay my bills. I can't see a future that doesn't end in complete disaster. So, yeah, I'm scared. And maybe stepping back is the smart thing to do. Or maybe it's exactly what your father wants," Arya said. "He's not just attacking the company. He's attacking you, your stability, your relationship with your daughter, because he knows if he breaks you, I fall too." Caleb was silent. "Don't let him win," Arya said quietly. Not like this. I don't know if I can keep fighting. Yes, you do. You've been fighting your whole life. This is just one more round. Another long silence. Then Caleb said, I need a few more days to get my daughter settled, to figure out next steps. Take the time you need. But Caleb? Yeah? Come back, please. I'll try. He hung up. Arya sat in her office, staring at the phone, feeling more alone than she had in months. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Arya was in a meeting with her legal team when her assistant knocked on the door, looking flustered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. Who? He wouldn't give his name. Just said he has information about the Ryder case. Arya exchanged glances with her lawyers. Send him in. The man who walked in was in his 60s, well-dressed, with the cautious look of someone who'd spent a career keeping secrets. Miss Bennett, he said, my name is Thomas Garrett. I used to work for Ryder Capital, general counsel for 12 years. Arya's pulse quickened. What can I do for you, Mr. Garrett? You can listen, and then you can decide whether what I have is worth using. He set a briefcase on the conference table, pulled out a thick folder. I've been watching the lawsuit unfold, he continued, and I've been wrestling with my conscience, because I know what Maxwell Ryder is capable of. I watched him do it for over a decade. Do what exactly? Arya's lawyer asked. Everything you've accused him of and more. Market manipulation, supplier interference, fabricated compliance issues. He has a playbook, and he uses it on every company he targets. I helped him do it. I drafted the contracts, managed the shell companies, coordinated with regulators. Arya felt her heart racing. Why are you telling us this? Because I'm dying, Thomas said bluntly. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I'd like to leave this world having done at least one decent thing. He pushed the folder toward Arya. This is documentation of 5 separate acquisitions where Maxwell used the same tactics he's using on Bennett Industries. Internal memos, financial transfers, communication logs, everything you need to prove a pattern of behavior spanning 15 years. Arya opened the folder, scanned the contents. It was damning, undeniable. Why keep all this? She asked. Insurance, in case Maxwell ever turned on me. Turns out I was right to be paranoid. Thomas smiled grimly. But now it's yours. Use it well. Mr. Garrett, this could expose you to criminal liability. I'm dying anyway. What are they going to do? Give me 6 months in prison? He stood, buttoned his jacket. I'm prepared to testify if needed, but I'd prefer if the documents spoke for themselves. He walked to the door, then paused. Maxwell Ryder is a brilliant man, he said. But he's also a bully, and bullies only understand one thing, being hit back harder than they hit you. Don't hold back, Ms. Bennett. Then he was gone. Arya sat staring at the folder, barely able to process what had just happened. Her lawyer broke the silence. This changes everything. With this evidence, we don't just have a case, we have a weapon. Can we verify it? Arya asked. We'll need time, but preliminary review suggests it's authentic. If even half of this holds up, Maxwell's entire defense collapses. Arya pulled out her phone, called Caleb. He answered on the 3rd ring. Arya, I need you to come back, right now. We just got the break we needed. What break? She told him about Thomas Garrett, the documents, the testimony. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I'm on my way. He arrived within the hour, looking haggard but focused. Arya spread the documents across the conference table, and they went through them together, piece by piece. It was worse than they'd imagined. Maxwell had orchestrated acquisitions worth billions, using the exact same playbook every time. And Thomas Garrett had documented all of it. This isn't just evidence, Caleb said quietly. This is a roadmap of corporate fraud spanning 15 years. Can we use it without destroying your father completely? Arya asked. Caleb looked at her. Do you want to? Arya thought about everything Maxwell had done. The sabotage, the manipulation, the public humiliation, the way he'd turned his own son into a weapon and then discarded him when he was no longer useful. No, she said. I don't. Neither do I. They filed the new evidence the next morning. The response was seismic. Maxwell's legal team scrambled to challenge the admissibility, claimed the documents were obtained illegally, accused Thomas Garrett of fabricating evidence. But the damage was done. The story was everywhere, and this time it wasn't speculation. It was documentation. Investors began pulling out of Ryder Capital funds. Partners distanced themselves. The Commerce Board announced they were expanding their investigation to include Maxwell's entire portfolio. And through it all, Maxwell stayed silent. Until he didn't. Arya was in her office when the call came in. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Bennett, Maxwell's voice, cold and controlled. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen. I'm prepared to offer a settlement, full release of Bennett Industries from any claim or obligation, financial compensation for damages, and a public statement clearing you of any wrongdoing. Arya's grip tightened on the phone. In exchange for what? The lawsuit drops, the evidence stays sealed, and this ends quietly. You mean you get away with it? I mean we both walk away with what we want. You get your company, I get my reputation, everyone wins. Except all the other companies you've destroyed. Ancient history, Maxwell said, irrelevant to our current situation. Arya looked out the window at the city below. She thought about her grandfather, about the factory floor he'd walked every day, about the people who'd built their lives around Bennett Industries, about Caleb, who'd sacrificed everything to help her fight. No deal, she said. Arya, you don't get to walk away from this. Not this time. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. She'd just turned down a guaranteed win, a clean exit. Everything she'd been fighting for handed to her on a silver platter. And she'd said no, because some fights weren't about winning. They were about what you were willing to become to get there. The trial date was set for 6 weeks out. Arya and Caleb spent every waking moment preparing, reviewing documents, coordinating with lawyers, rehearsing testimony. Thomas Garrett agreed to appear as a witness, despite the toll it was taking on his health. But Maxwell wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks before the trial, Caleb's daughter was hospitalized. She'd collapsed at school, stress-induced anxiety attack. The doctor said she'd be fine physically, but emotionally she was fragile. Caleb called Arya from the hospital, voice breaking. I can't do this anymore, he said. I can't keep putting her through this. Caleb, she's 4 years old, Arya. She should be worried about toys and cartoons, not whether her father's going to be okay. This is killing her. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe my father was right. Maybe some fights aren't worth the cost. Arya felt something crack inside her chest. Don't do this. We're so close. Close to what? Winning a lawsuit while my daughter falls apart? That's not a win, Arya. That's just a different kind of loss. So what do you want to do? I want to accept my father's settlement. End this before it destroys what's left of my family. And what about us? Caleb was quiet for a long time. I don't know. The line went dead. Arya sat in her office, staring at the phone, feeling the floor drop out from under her. She'd lost him. After everything they'd fought for, everything they'd built together, she'd lost him. And she couldn't even blame him for it. Because in the end, he was right. Some things were more important than winning, even if it meant losing everything else. Arya didn't cry. She wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, she sat at her desk until the office grew dark, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, feeling numb. Laura found her there around 8. You're still here, Laura said from the doorway. Didn't have anywhere else to go. Laura walked in, sat down. I heard about Caleb's daughter. How is she? Stable, physically anyway. And Caleb? Gone. The word tasted bitter. He's taking Maxwell's settlement, dropping out of the lawsuit. Laura was quiet for a moment. Can't say I blame him. Arya looked up sharply. What? His kid's in the hospital, Arya. He's broke, cut off from his family, fighting a war that's destroying everyone around him. Of course he's walking away. That's what any sane parent would do. So I'm supposed to just accept it? I'm saying you should understand it. Laura leaned forward. This lawsuit was never about you and Caleb against Maxwell. It was about saving Bennett Industries, and we can still do that without him. Can we? Thomas Garrett's testimony stands regardless of whether Caleb's involved. The documentation is solid. We've got a case. But not the same case, Arya said. Caleb was the inside witness, the son who turned against his father to do the right thing. That's what made the story compelling. Without him, we're just another company suing a billionaire. Then we make it compelling in a different way. Arya wanted to believe her. But without Caleb, everything felt hollow. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Meet me tomorrow. 7 a.m. Bennett Industries parking garage. Come alone. C.R. Caleb. Arya stared at the message, heart hammering. He wanted to meet. Why? To explain. To apologize. To say goodbye properly? She texted back. I'll be there. She barely slept that night. When her alarm went off at 5:30, she was already awake, staring at the ceiling. She got dressed mechanically, drove to the office in the pre-dawn darkness, pulled into the empty parking garage. Caleb's car was already there. He was leaning against it, looking exhausted. When he saw her, he straightened. Thanks for coming, he said. You said to come alone. I'm here. What do you want? Caleb flinched at her tone but didn't back down. I want to explain. You already did. Your daughter comes first. I get it. Do you? Yes, Arya said and meant it. You're a father. She needs you. This fight was destroying her and you chose her. That's what you're supposed to do. Caleb looked at her and she saw the pain in his eyes. Then why do I feel like I'm betraying you? Because you are, Arya said bluntly. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. Arya, I'm not angry, Caleb. I'm sad and disappointed and hurt. But I'm not angry because I understand. She took a breath. Your daughter didn't choose this. She's an innocent kid caught in the middle of a war she doesn't understand. She deserves better. She deserves you. And what about you? I'll figure it out. Caleb stepped closer. I don't want to leave you alone in this. But you are. What if there was another way? Arya frowned. What are you talking about? Caleb pulled out his phone, showed her a document. I've been thinking about this all night. My father's settlement offer. It's designed to make me disappear quietly. Take some money, sign an NDA, walk away. But what if I don't take the money? Then you're still broke. But I'm free. And more importantly, the NDA doesn't apply. Which means I can still testify. Arya's pulse quickened. Caleb, hear me out. I drop out of the lawsuit as a plaintiff. I'm no longer personally suing my father, but I can still appear as a witness for Bennett Industries. I can still tell the truth about what he did. That's not what he's offering. It's what I'm offering, a counterproposal. I'll accept his settlement on the condition that it only applies to me personally, not to my testimony in your case. He gets me out of the fight. But you still get the truth. Arya stared at him. He'll never agree to that. Maybe not, but it's worth asking. And if he says no, then I testify anyway and deal with the consequences. Caleb, he'll destroy you. He's already destroying me, Caleb said. At least this way, it means something. Arya felt something warm and fierce bloom in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just gratitude that he was still fighting, even in his own way. What about your daughter? She asked. I talked to my sister last night, really talked. She reminded me that my daughter doesn't just need a father who's present. She needs a father she can be proud of. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. He smiled sadly. She's 4. She won't understand it now. But someday, I want her to know I tried. Arya crossed the distance between them, pulled him into a hug. Caleb wrapped his arms around her, held tight. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not giving up completely. I'm not that easy to get rid of. They stood there in the empty garage holding each other, drawing strength from the contact. Then Caleb pulled back. I need to go, he said. I'm meeting with my father's lawyers this morning to present the counterproposal. Good luck. I'll need it. He started to walk away, then stopped. Arya? Yeah? When this is over, however it ends, I want to try. With us. If you're still interested. Arya's throat tightened. Ask me again when we're both still standing. Deal. He left. Arya stood alone in the garage, feeling the weight of the upcoming battle settle over her. But this time, it didn't feel quite so heavy, because she wasn't alone anymore. Maxwell rejected Caleb's counterproposal within 2 hours. The response came through Caleb's lawyers, a flat no, followed by a threat. If Caleb testified in the Bennett Industries case, Maxwell would pursue legal action for breach of fiduciary duty, seek full custody of Caleb's daughter, and ensure he never worked in finance again. It was a declaration of total war. Caleb called Arya from his car. He said, "No." "I heard. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to testify anyway." "Caleb, I know what it'll cost me, but I'm done negotiating with him. I'm done being afraid." Arya heard the steel in his voice, the absolute conviction. "Okay, then we do this together." "Together," Caleb agreed. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in late October. The courthouse was packed: reporters, observers, legal analysts. Arya walked in with her legal team, feeling the weight of every eye on her. Caleb arrived separately, looking grim but resolute. Maxwell sat at the defendant's table, flanked by 4 lawyers, looking calm and completely in control. The judge entered, called the court to order, and Arya's nightmare officially began. The first week was brutal. Maxwell's lawyers attacked every piece of evidence, questioned every witness, cast doubt on everything. They painted Arya as an inexperienced CEO who'd made bad decisions and was now blaming others for her failures. They portrayed Caleb as a disgruntled son seeking revenge. But Arya's team held firm. They presented the documentation from Thomas Garrett, showed the pattern of behavior across multiple acquisitions, demonstrated the systematic sabotage of Bennett Industries' operations. And then, on day 8, Caleb took the stand. He was sworn in, sat down, and met his father's eyes across the courtroom. Maxwell's expression didn't change, but Arya saw the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening around his eyes. Arya's lead attorney, a sharp woman named Catherine Ross, approached the witness stand. "Mr. Ryder, can you describe your relationship with the defendant, Maxwell Ryder?" "He's my father," Caleb said simply. "And your professional relationship?" "Until recently, I worked for Ryder Capital. I managed acquisitions, handled due diligence, oversaw integration of new companies into our portfolio." "Can you describe the typical acquisition process at Ryder Capital?" Caleb took a breath. "We identified struggling companies with valuable assets. Then we created conditions that made those struggles worse: supplier pressure, regulatory complaints, media campaigns. Once the company was desperate enough, we offered acquisition terms that were heavily weighted in our favor." "And this was standard practice?" "It was the only practice." Maxwell's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Catherine continued, "Can you describe what happened when Bennett Industries became a target?" Caleb walked through it all: the supplier interference, the inspections, the board manipulation. He spoke clearly, calmly, without emotion, just facts. "And at what point did you decide to act against your father's interests?" Catherine asked. "When I realized that what we were doing wasn't just aggressive business. It was destruction for profit, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore. Even knowing the personal cost? Especially knowing the personal cost, because if I didn't stand up, who would?" The courtroom was silent. Maxwell's attorney cross-examined aggressively, tried to paint Caleb as bitter and vindictive. But Caleb didn't waver. He answered every question honestly, admitted his own complicity in past acquisitions, and took full responsibility for his choices. It was devastating testimony, and it was completely credible. When Caleb stepped down, Arya caught his eye. He looked exhausted but relieved, like he'd been carrying a weight for years and had finally set it down. Thomas Garrett testified next. He was frail, moving slowly, but his mind was sharp. He corroborated everything Caleb had said, provided additional documentation, and withstood a brutal cross-examination without breaking. By the time he finished, Maxwell's defense was crumbling. The closing arguments came 2 days later. Catherine Ross stood before the jury and laid it out simply. "This case is about power, about what happens when someone with unlimited resources decides they want something and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. Maxwell Ryder targeted Bennett Industries for acquisition. When the CEO refused his terms, he systematically destroyed her company's operations to force compliance. That's not business, that's extortion." Maxwell's attorney countered that Ryder Capital had acted within the bounds of normal business practices, that market conditions, not deliberate sabotage, had caused Bennett Industries' struggles. But the evidence told a different story. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Arya spent those 48 hours in a state of suspended animation. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except the waiting. Caleb called her every few hours just to check in. They didn't talk about the trial. They talked about nothing: weather, coffee, old movies, anything to fill the silence. On day 3, the jury returned. The courtroom filled quickly. Arya sat at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped tight. Caleb was in the gallery, directly behind her. She could feel his presence like a physical thing. The judge entered. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of market manipulation, how do you find?" "We find the defendant guilty." Arya's vision blurred. She heard the rest through a haze. Guilty on supplier interference, guilty on fraudulent business practices, guilty on conspiracy to commit fraud, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the exits. Maxwell sat frozen, face blank. The judge banged her gavel, called for order. "Mr. Ryder, you are ordered to pay compensatory damages in the amount of $42 million to Bennett Industries, plus punitive damages of $100 million. Furthermore, you are barred from any business dealings with the plaintiff company for a period of 10 years. This court is adjourned." Arya sat there, unable to move. They'd won. Actually won. She felt a hand on her shoulder, turned to see Caleb. He was smiling, tears in his eyes. "We did it," he said. "We did," Arya agreed. They walked out of the courthouse together into a sea of cameras and questions. Arya gave a brief statement, thanked the jury, thanked her legal team, said she was grateful justice had been served. Then she and Caleb got in her car and drove away. They ended up at a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booze and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting for hours. They ordered food neither of them would eat and sat across from each other, just breathing. "What happens now?" Caleb asked. "I rebuild," Arya said. "Pay off the debts, stabilize operations, hire back the people we had to let go. Make Bennett Industries into what it's supposed to be." "Sounds like a lot of work." "It is, but it's good work." She looked at him. "What about you?" Caleb smiled faintly. "I need to find a job, rebuild my savings, figure out how to be a present father while also paying rent." "You could work for me." "Arya, I'm serious. Bennett Industries needs someone who understands operations, who can spot inefficiencies, who knows how corporate predators think. That's you." "Your board would never approve." "My board just watched me win a $142 million lawsuit. Right now they'll approve whatever I ask." She leaned forward. "I want you there, Caleb. Not because of what we've been through, because you're good at this, because we work well together." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What about us? The personal stuff." "We figure it out as we go," Arya said. "No pressure, no contracts, no timelines. Just two people who care about each other trying to build something real." "That's terrifyingly vague." "I know, but it's honest." Caleb reached across the table, took her hand. "Okay, I'm in." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They sat there in the diner holding hands, and for the first time in months, Arya felt something she'd almost forgotten: peace. The next 6 months were chaos, but it was productive chaos. Bennett Industries used the settlement money to pay off debts, upgrade equipment, and expand operations. Arya hired Caleb as chief operating officer, and together they rebuilt the company from the ground up. It wasn't smooth. There were fights about strategy, disagreements about priorities, moments when the stress threatened to tear them apart. But they worked through it, learned to communicate, figured out how to be partners in business and in life. Caleb moved into a modest apartment near his sister's place, established a stable routine with his daughter. She started therapy, worked through her anxiety, and slowly began to trust that her father wasn't going anywhere. Maxwell Ryder appealed the verdict, lost, and quietly retired from public life. His empire contracted, his influence waned, and within a year, he was barely a footnote in the business world. Caleb never spoke to him again. One Saturday morning in early spring, Arya found herself at Bennett Industries, even though it was her day off. Old habits died hard. She was standing on the production floor, watching the machines run, when Caleb appeared beside her. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. "I wanted to see it," Arya said. "All of it, working, thriving." Caleb looked around, smiled. "Your grandfather would be proud." "I hope so." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Caleb said, "I've been thinking." "About what?" About something my daughter said last night. She asked if you were my girlfriend. Arya's heart skipped. What did you tell her? I said you were someone very important to me, and she asked if that meant you were family. And I realized I didn't know how to answer that, because we've never really defined what this is. Arya turned to face him. What do you want it to be?
I want it to be real, Caleb said. Not just convenient or circumstantial, real. The kind of thing we build intentionally because we choose to, not because we got trapped in it. I want that too. Yeah? Yeah. Caleb smiled, pulled her close. Then let's build it. They kissed there on the factory floor, surrounded by the noise of machines and the smell of metal and oil. It wasn't romantic in any traditional sense, but it was theirs. And that made it perfect. A year later, Bennett Industries was thriving. They'd landed 3 major contracts, expanded into new markets, and doubled their workforce. The board was happy, the investors were confident, and Arya finally felt like she was doing what her grandfather had always believed she could. Caleb had become indispensable, not just as COO, but as her partner in every sense. They moved in together, a small house with a yard big enough for his daughter to play in. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. His daughter, who'd started calling Arya by her first name without any prompting, was thriving too. She was back to being a normal, happy kid, worried about homework and friends, and whether she'd get the toy she wanted for her birthday. One evening, Arya and Caleb were sitting on the back porch, watching her play in the yard. Do you ever regret it? Arya asked. Regret what? Everything. The lawsuit, losing your family's money, fighting your father, all of it. Caleb was quiet for a moment. No, because all of that led here. To this. And I wouldn't trade this for anything. Even when it was hardest? Especially then. Because the hard parts taught me who I actually wanted to be. Arya leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders. I used to think success meant never failing, never showing weakness, never needing help. And now? Now I think success means knowing when to fight and when to let go, when to stand alone and when to ask for help, when to protect what you've built and when to build something new. She paused. You taught me that. You taught me something too, Caleb said. What's that? That courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. They sat there as the sun set, watching Caleb's daughter chase fireflies across the lawn, and Arya thought about everything they'd survived. The manipulation, the sabotage, the lawsuits and late nights and moments when it felt like the world was ending. And she realized something important. The real victory wasn't the lawsuit or the settlement or even saving Bennett Industries. The real victory was choosing to fight for something that mattered, even when the cost was higher than anyone should have to pay. It was learning that strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means putting yourself back together afterward, scars and all. Some people spend their whole lives avoiding conflict, playing it safe, choosing comfort over conviction. And maybe that works for them. But Arya had learned something different, that the things worth having are the things worth fighting for. That real partnership means showing up when it's hard, not just when it's easy. That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who's willing to be imperfect with you, to struggle and fail and keep trying anyway. Maxwell Ryder had tried to teach his son that power meant control, that winning meant crushing everyone in your path. But Caleb had learned a different lesson. That true power comes from choosing who you want to be, even when it costs you everything you have. That winning means building something that matters, not just acquiring something that looks impressive. And Arya had learned that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that asking for help isn't failure, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit you can't do it alone. The fireflies blinked in the gathering darkness. Caleb's daughter laughed, pure and delighted, and Arya felt something she'd spent her whole life chasing without realizing it. Contentment, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. Hey, Caleb said softly. Arya looked at him. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not giving up. On the company. On this. On me. Arya smiled. You made it pretty easy. Liar. Okay, you made it pretty hard, but you were worth it. Caleb kissed her, slow and gentle, and Arya thought about the boardroom where they'd first met. about the trap that had been laid for her, the deal she'd refused, the partnership she'd built instead. She thought about all the ways it could have gone wrong, all the moments they could have given up.
And she was grateful they hadn't. Because in the end, the best things in life aren't the ones that come easily. They're the ones you fight for, sacrifice for, build brick by brick with your own hands. They're messy and imperfect, and sometimes they fall apart before you figure out how to hold them together. But they're yours. And that makes all the difference. Caleb's daughter ran up to the porch, breathless and grinning. "Did you see? I caught 3 fireflies." "We saw," Caleb said. "You're getting pretty good at that. Can we keep them?" "No, sweetheart. They need to be free." She considered this, then carefully opened her hands. The fireflies drifted upward, blinking as they rose into the night sky. "There," she said, satisfied. "Now they can find their families." Arya watched them go, those tiny lights disappearing into the darkness, and thought, that's what freedom looks like. Not the absence of struggle, but the choice to rise anyway. She reached for Caleb's hand, held tight, and together they watched the night settle in around them. Imperfect, uncertain, but undeniably theirs,